Welcome to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Allie Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrausser. Allie, what is going on?
At the time of this recording, it's like the first accumulative snow, and it's so pretty, I will say. Up in Minnesota here, it's like 6, 7 inches. It's like a great amount. It's fluffy, but I there is like this phenomenon with snow where everything is quieter.
Yeah.
Everything is quieter and it's just calm and peaceful. And that's the exact opposite of what we do here on the podcast. We want to dial it up. We want to turn up everything. We want to set it ablaze. We are deep in this series. And by the time this episode comes out, it might be showing signs of springtime. One could hope. But that is what is going on in the world that we're in right now recording.
I wonder if our guest got any snow where he's at ever. Maybe we'll talk about that. Our guest today is Jason Van Noos. He is considered the gentle disruptor, the apprenticeship and the talent pipeline specialist, unapologetic advocate for high school talent. He does work in the Lowndes High School, work-based learning and youth development there. Jason, how you doing, man? Thanks for being here with us.
Man, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the podcast. And to answer your question, I think it snowed 3 times in my entire life where I live. It's currently uh 66 degrees.
Oh yeah.
So
No,
yeah.
no.
So golf weather year round where it
Oh,
is here.
that's so I have been in Atlanta where there has been snow on the ground there, but that's north pretty far, a couple of hours
It's
or
about
whatever
4 hours
out.
north,
Yeah.
and when it snows in Atlanta, like the city shuts down because they don't
Yeah,
have the
yeah.
infrastructure to clear the roads and stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Good stuff. Well, let's open up here a little bit about your pathway. How did you get to this point of being this talent pipeline specialist, a work-based learning advocate? I do know kind of from reading in on you a little bit, you're an athlete and you kind of used that as your entry point into education, and then all of a sudden it was like it was a click. So unpack that
Yeah.
for us, man.
Yeah, so I mean, long story short, it comes down and boils down to mentorship. I was a psychology major, and I picked that major because as a young kid, I was a movie fanatic, and I saw this movie where there's this really smart guy, and he happened to be a psychiatrist, and so I picked my major based on the movie Hannibal. It's embarrassing. I've got my whole story is on my LinkedIn featured page if anyone wants to go watch it. But long story short, my mentor and advisor questioned that, and I took that personally, and I thought he was trying to tell me I wasn't good enough, and what he really ended up doing was he was trying to save me from a career. It's a great career, but it's a
Mhm.
very heavy, burdensome career. And he was trying to save me a lot of education in an area for such a silly reason.
Mm.
And then the next mentor in my life was my athletic advisor, and people who are scholarship athletes at my school got their advisory, went and talked to them, and he was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing education?" And I was like, "I'm gonna play professional sports. You put me in for whatever major you want." I really didn't care. And he's like, "Well, I think we're gonna do this because when you get done playing, you can go and you can coach." And I was like, "Sure, that's great." And I wasn't thinking of anything other than playing sports professionally, which I didn't do.
Mhm.
But anyway, so that's kind of how I got into this. I started off as a business ed teacher. Then I went into graphic design and teaching graphic communications. And along the way, looking back, I kind of see these patterns and kind of reflections in the water, if you will, of being a creation person, being a disruptor. So
Mhm.
when I was in teaching entrepreneurship in business, I canceled my third level class and told my principal, and I was very fortunate, had a great principal who let me kind of have some autonomy. I said, I'm not teaching from a book. I said, we're going to create a business. We're going to run a business. And looking back, I didn't see that as a disruptive element back then. But teaching kids how to buy and order and stock and inventory and liquidate and merchandising and I mean all these things. It was a lot of fun. And then when I moved to graphic design, I would say I had a really substantial print shop behind my classroom.
Hmm.
And so again, I built another business. And I say I like the school. I didn't own it by any means, but we built a business so the kids could work and get live work. So this whole time my career is evolving. I'm doing work-based learning without really knowing what work-based learning is.
Uh-huh.
And then I had an opportunity to kind of move back home. This whole time I'm working in neighboring and contiguous counties to where I live. And I get a chance to move back home to the school where I work now, Lowndes County High School, or Lowndes County School. It's the high school here. And it's like the third or fourth largest high school in Georgia. It's a big school.
Hmm.
And they were wanting to have this program rebuilt and restructured. And they said, "Hey, we've heard that you have a background of building things." And so that's kind of where I came. I really took this job not knowing what I was getting into. But I mean that in the positive. I didn't know how good of a match my skills were for work-based learning. However you want to qualify or quantify my skill set, it's a really good match for work-based learning, partnership development, moving in the direction.
Love that.
So you're deep in the work now of work-based learning. It's a
Mhm.
hot topic right now. We have yourself and others who have kind of like pioneered it and grown it. Um, I'm really interested though in like I don't think you view it how maybe everybody views it, which is why we're
Yeah.
having you on. So like
Okay.
just walk us through like how
Yeah.
do you view work-based learning now and how are you kind of pushing the
Hmm.
envelope on that very hot area right now in education?
Wow, that's a big, big question. And again, you may have to reel me in. No one's ever accused me of being concise, so you may have to ring a bell if I get talking too long. But um, I mean, work-based learning in Georgia it's been a pretty substantial program in Georgia for probably the better part of 15 years. You know, we were the first schools to really start doing it, and our model is 16-year-olds and older. You can be in our program. You apply, we can accept you, or based on attendance and discipline and those types of things. And then we release you from school to go to work. So the students are actually earning credit two, three, sometimes four different ways between high school credit, getting paid at work, dual enrollment credit, and sometimes even a registered apprenticeship credit with the Department of Labor. Um, that's the particular model that got some attention last year at ACT. One of my business partners won National Business Partner of the Year, Ace Electric, and so when you start doing these things, a lot of it is to me, work-based learning is about leveling the playing field. You know, it's about providing students opportunities to move past what they're just interested in and to be exposed to new things. I think a lot of people are scared to fail. And one of my passions for with work-based learning is I don't want my kid I'm not scared to fail. I don't want my kids to be scared to fail. I want to put them in an environment where they can fail in a safe environment, if that makes sense. That's what to me that's what learning is, specifically career learning is like I need to push you to the point of failure so you can learn and develop those skill sets while you're in a safe environment in like high school. I'd rather you do it now than get out into the real world and mess up and lose your dream job or not do well in the interview for your dream job. So to me, it's that ultimate leveler of the playing field, whether you come from an elite family with a lot of money or you come from, the foster care system. I haven't met an employer yet who cares about that. They care, can you do the work? Do you show up? And are you productive? And if I can put students in a situation where they can break down some of these generational barriers and obstacles to success, that's kind of what keeps me going in this area. And then just again, the way you pursue partnerships. Once you're doing it, it's just looking at how people trying to identify inefficiencies
Hmm.
and then increase the efficacy in those areas, making sure that you're recruiting partners, making sure that you're sustaining those partnerships, making sure that you're putting students in the position to succeed. Because if we're being honest, one of the biggest things is there's this verbiage that I've been using for a long time, and it's really popular. This talent pipeline, talent pipeline. Well, talent pipelines require two things. Well, really, they require three things. They require an origin, a destination, and content. So think about it in those three ways. If you have a talent pipeline and it has an origin and you're putting talent in the pipeline, but it doesn't have a destination, you're just wasting that talent. And the opposite is if you have a pipeline with no origin, the talent's probably going to be minimal you could have it connected to the most robust employer and industry in your community, but if you're not putting students in that pipeline and that's not starting with your programs, it doesn't. So you can build this pipeline, but the value is not the pipeline itself. It's the intentional effort to fill that pipeline and connect it at both ends. That's something that I think people miss when they try to use the buzzwords and they try to
Mhm.
create this attention and just say pipelines and retention and access to talent. Like the people, it's easy to get attention when you use these buzzwords,
Yep.
but actually doing it is a little bit different. And I think that's kind of where, some of the people you've had on this in the series, prior, and myself have kind of been able to differentiate and move past it, is move past the theoretical, the anecdotal, and into the application of this. And once you develop proof of concept, that's really when the ball starts rolling for your program.
Yeah.
Is all it takes is one industry to be recognized, and then all the competitors, all the people who compete against that industry in the private sector, they start calling me and saying, "Hey, look, how do I get an intern? How do I get an apprentice?"
Yeah.
Because it's that what they the FOMO, the fear of missing out, right?
Mhm.
No one that they what do they know that I don't know? So
Well,
it's kind of interesting.
let's go into that. Like, so before we started the record button, we were talking, and there's a different approach you take to partnerships because I think a lot of people will,
Mm,
including myself, I made this mistake before where we'll talk about, hey, you know what, you're just doing a good thing for the community, da da da, da,
mm,
right? Yeah,
mm.
let's unpack that there because
Yeah,
before we press record, as I was like dying to press record before this
yeah,
podcast, you have a different approach that I think a lot of our listeners really need to hear, and it I have found I'm very interested in like the data you collect and how you approach them, the partners first,
yeah,
and let's not talk about like giving back. Like there's
yeah,
some legit tangible assets here. So yeah, unpack that.
absolutely. So I guess it all starts with, education is really bad about what I call alphabet soup, right? You have all these acronyms that are known. Education and military are really bad at those things. They have these acronyms that nobody else knows about, and they throw them around like it's just a part of an acronym, like you should know what I'm talking about, and but they don't, right? And so when educators and educational entities are trying to partner with industry, I think we do a really bad job of forcing our language on them
Hmm.
and not trying to break down that communication barrier and tell them what this partnership really means. And so as I started recruiting partners, one of the first things I did was realize, look, I don't know it. I haven't met a teacher ever, and I know you both are in education, so maybe you're the teacher. You can be the first person to tell me ever. I've never met a teacher who says, I have all the resources I need. Like I've got a budget, I've got the time, right? We're all working with less resources than are ideal, right? And
Hmm.
that's not a throwing systems or our employers under the bus. That's just the nature of education. It's always
Right.
about doing more with less. And so what I realized is I needed to be able to multiply myself. I need to be in multiple places at one time. And so because of this, I started trying to collect this data and trying to just make things really efficient. And so I needed to get industry and partners on board. I had to get them on board, right? Because I was looking to establish a proof of concept to other employers really quickly. And so what I began to do is one was disruptive is I began to recruit partners first. Meaning I would come to you, Peter, you own a fabrication facility. I'd come to you and say, hey, look, here's my vision, here's my mission, here's what I've got to offer. And that can be challenging sometimes because the biggest obstacle, anytime you bring a new product to market, the biggest obstacle is education. Why is what I'm offering better than what you already have, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so you go and I wanted to recruit these partners first because it's a lot easier and more efficient for me to get a partner on board and then to go into the fabrication or welding or ag mechanic pathway and say, I've already got a partner on board. They're looking to hire 4 interns. Who's interested? So that's a 1 for 4 transaction for me versus letting kids knock on my door. Hey, I want to be a welder. Okay, then I got to go find one person to hire one welder, and I'm having to go out and get 4 employers to hire the same 4 kids versus getting a bigger employer on board or a smaller employer with multiple interns on board. So that's the first thing I really did that shook that up. But then I also noticed that when you're pitching these employers, not only do you use these alphabet soup, but and I would say that probably the thing that if anybody's listening to this, or I know there are, but the people, if there's anything they can get out of this, it would be um, stop pitching altruism and philanthropy,
Hmm.
because it's our go-to pitch because we're in education. That's why
Yeah.
we're in education, is because that pulls at our heartstrings. That moves the needle for us. Do it for the kids, right? And I'm not saying that's not an effective approach. It is very effective to get people on board, but it's not effective in follow through. Actually, there's quite a bit of breakage when you begin to recruit with philanthropy, because as soon as a for-profit conflict comes on the calendar and it competes with your event, they're going to say, oh, I'll get with them later, right?
Hmm.
So I wanted to start pitching to them in their terms, real world value. What is an average intern not so much make in terms of the community, which I track that too. What are their raw wages? What's their economic impact? But what is an average intern? How much value does that bring to your community, to your industry, to your employability? Um, can you put a value on jumping all of your competitors in the line regarding access to talent first? Can you quantify that? And they're like, no, I can't. I'm like, that's what I'm giving you. I'm giving the chance to hire the best students out of this industry. And I'm giving you the chance to leave the ones who aren't good enough to work for your competitors to hire. That's a substantial competitive advantage.
Hmm.
Second, I started talking to them about return on investment. And so I would talk to them specifically about, your tax dollars go into a pool of money, and in the middle, a lot of that, roads and schools are what that goes to support. So if you want to boil it down to make it a really simple pitch, you say your tax dollars are coming to the school, and it's our job to take that tax dollar and to turn it into talent, right? So we're the genesis of this talent pipeline. It's our job to build, to identify, cultivate, build this talent, put it in the pipeline so you can employ it on the back end. Well, if as an employer you do not have a strategy to hire this talent, essentially what you are doing is you are paying to build talent that your competitors are going to hire. And when you start to flip that mentality and they say, hadn't thought about that way. And then you start to talk to them about retaining that talent. And for the first time in a long time, if not ever, they're going to start seeing a return on what I call a sunken cost, which is that you can't do anything about your taxes. Your taxes go where they go, right?
Hmm.
But if you can find a way to actually get a return on that cost, now you're more profitable. Because anybody who's in business knows it's a lot easier to grow your own talent than to recruit talent away from other people. And more importantly, if you're recruiting talent, if I'm recruiting Allie to come to my school system, and the one thing I'm offering her is her paycheck, she's loyal to the paycheck, not to my system. She's not to the vision and the mission. So that makes her susceptible to leave for another quarter an hour raise or another. And so when you recruit people based on money and you're throwing money at them, then they're loyal to their paycheck. So as you begin to go through that process of recruit partners first, it makes you more efficient. Know how to pitch and talk to employers, because they need to see the bottom line. So when there is a conflict that comes up, they say, hey, you know what? I'm still going to go to this event because this is my bottom line.
Hmm.
This is my return on investment. This is my way to gain a competitive advantage over other people. Because another thing is, you mentioned bringing the new product to market. Education is the biggest obstacle. What you really have is you've got two people or two issues that people have conflated. They have conflated traditional practice, this is over here somewhere, and legal compliance.
Hmm.
Two separate issues, but they think they're the same thing. And say, oh, no, Jason, we can't hire an 18-year-old kid. And they're like, well, why not? Tell me why. Well, it's illegal. No, it's not. FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act, says you can hire kids under 18. There's 17 things that you can't do with these students.
Hmm.
But most programs in work-based learning, like mine in Georgia, they're exempt, which means they can do 7 of the 17 things. Okay, so not only are your legislators incentivizing or encouraging you to do it, they're often incentivizing you to do it with laws in Georgia like HB 402, which gives them an umbrella discount on their workers' compensation policy. So
Hmm.
they're encouraging it with legislation. They are removing restrictions. Well, why is the government doing that? Because they realize this is an untapped segment of the labor market that people are saying, well, I can't hire those kids. No, you can't. You're conflating what you've done in the previous generations to what is legal. And that's fine. If you want to continue to not employ 16, 17-year-old students, that's great. That's fine. But I also want you to know that is something that you're imposing on yourself. It is not a legal compliance issue. It's a traditional practice. And when they conflate those two things, it takes an education, a marketing ploy to go in there and to open their eyes to it. And I even have a little video I made for the Georgia Department of Education, where one of my employers said previously we thought we couldn't hire students under
Yeah.
18 in a manufacturing environment. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I didn't coach them to say that. I didn't tell them that. I was just like, that is gold because everyone thinks you can't hire students who are 18 or under
I
18, and you can.
I can't take notes fast enough, Allie. Like I am legit. There's so much fire right here, Jason. I'm legitimately like gonna take this and we're gonna like alter the way that we bring in partners just off that last 10-minute conversation. Where you at, Allie?
No,
Where's your head?
I mean, so I kind of want, I mean, I could take
I'm
this in so
flipping the
many different
page, sorry.
directions. I know there's just literally so much that I I think one of the things I want to kind of dig into a little bit is uh I'm like really trying to choose what I want to go places.
I have
You're
nowhere to
like
be. I have nowhere to be. So whatever you want.
It's maybe a
okay,
two-parter.
I know. So, all right. You recently posted this 31 and 31 on your LinkedIn.
Yes, ma'am.
And if anyone like you have to go back to like November when Jason was like posting this on his feed. But I was amazed at the range of programming
Mhm.
that you have. So it was like an appreciation series that you did on student apprenticeships and jobs, and it was like highlighting 31 different students.
Yes.
Like, how does it like one that in itself is amazing, like the
Well,
just
thank you.
showing off all the amazing things, but to kind of like dig into this, that's obviously not where the program started.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so like how did you get there? Like
Yeah.
yes, your approach is like disruptive, that part, but now you're really like in this explosive phase, I would
Yeah.
say, with your programming. I mean, I would want to go to that school if I
Yeah.
lived in Georgia. So
Well,
it's
thank you.
like, yeah, how did you get there? Where is it going? Like, yeah, share a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
So, a lot of it comes, and so I mean, numbers is so I took over this program in 2018, and I took over the program when there was like 48 kids, and so since then my program has grown 538%, and it's grown that way because I think of some ways, and this is not me taking credit for this. I want everybody to understand this. This is just doing things differently,
Mhm.
not for the sake of being contrarian, but doing things differently for the sake of being more efficient. So I noticed the application process was broken. It was paper-based, so I turned it digital. I started collecting data that I could use to leverage, like I said, those industry partners, what I call them alphas. So you may hear me slip into and out of that verbiage in this episode. Um, but I wanted those alphas because alphas can be at conversations I can't be at, right? I can't go to every chamber meeting. I can go to every city council or county developer meeting. But if I can get those people and have them buy into my vision, they're at a lot more water coolers than I'm at, if that makes sense. And they're the ones who deal with new businesses. And so, yes, I can go out and market my program, but when I get people who move the needle in my community and I get them to buy in, not necessarily as employers, but just as stakeholders, the mayor, the county commissioner, elected officials, state senators, state legislators, federal. I have the Austin Scott is one of our representatives in Georgia. He in the House of Representatives, his field rep sits on my board. And so that was very strategic in trying to recruit those people because I need them having conversations when I'm not there. When they
Hmm.
hear people talk about talent and labor shortage, say, "Hey, have you thought about work-based learning? Jason's doing this." Well, that's a conversation I would miss out on because I'm not there. But if I have leveraged my stakeholders as marketers, marketing forces for me. So that's one way I think it's grown. But yeah, that 3131 campaign, um, it's really unique. And it's not like super creative, but it's just really unique in that typically how do we think employer or how do you think someone who comes and guest speaks in your classroom? Typical is you write them a thank you card, right?
Mhm.
And so when I got involved in doing LinkedIn, and I am super active on LinkedIn, and and there's a whole other disruptive element maybe for part two on how I use LinkedIn to be a free portfolio system for my students. But I'm really active on LinkedIn, and so I was like, who sees that thank you note? How can I turn a thank you into a public marketing tool? And it was like, okay, I write the thank you note, but then I thank them publicly on LinkedIn. So what happens when you thank them publicly on LinkedIn? I'm thanking the employer. I'm thanking them in front of all of their stakeholders, in front of their competitors, and their competitors are saying, "Uh-oh, what am I missing out on?" And I start getting cold calls because they see that their employers have this new access to talent, right? But more importantly, I am featuring my students and what they can do, the diversity of their skill sets.
Yeah.
And so it's one, so and it's not always the funnest thing to do. Like posting 31 days in a row on LinkedIn can get pretty tiring, and you're trying to figure out how do I differentiate the wording and the verbiage and space the kids out and change and um but having one event that highlights and accomplishes three or four different things, um, it's a really unique tool to be able to, and plus when you tag that student in those posts, that becomes an artifact that they can leverage longitudinally down the road when they're professional or when they graduate, versus putting these students on what we call these school safe platforms, right? And as soon as they graduate, their email address goes away and they lose access to these platforms. Well, LinkedIn is not that way. So that's kind of how that evolved is me just saying, you know what? I have a really robust program. I have a lot of students doing a lot of really unique things, which is more a testament to the teachers in my school than it is to me. It's pretty easy to place my talent because the teachers in my school system are so good.
Mhm.
Like all these I can't place students if they're not learning the skills in their classrooms, in their laboratories, right? So that's a testament to them. So it recruits for them, it recruits for me, it is thanking them, my employers publicly. It's accentuating and highlighting my students, the diversity of my skill set, my student skill set. So it's just a win-win-win program. And I did it not knowing that it was going to get the attention that it got. And hashtags work a little bit different on LinkedIn than they do like Twitter or Facebook or whatever else. But you can just go in and put in 31 and 31. And I think it's me and only one other campaign. Some fitness campaign did it like in 2016 and they stopped. So they clog up my algorithm a little bit. But so if you filter those out, most of the results are, and they're going to be, we've done it for 3 years in a row now.
Mhm.
So you're going to get kids all the way back to 2022 when we do that. And it's just, it's good. I give the kids, I get parent permission to put them on LinkedIn. And then I give them a little bonus and a little bonus grade if they're willing to let me post them on mine. And some of the kids get really competitive. I'm like, look, I'm only picking 31. There's 190 of y'all. I'm picking 31. So your pictures better be good. And they better tell a good story. And so that's it's a fun thing to be able to do that every year. We usually do it in October because there's 31 days in October. I had to postpone it this year because Helene that we caught the eastern eye wall of Helene, and so we were out of school for 3 weeks,
Wow.
and so it was pretty bad. So I pushed it to November, but normally it's something we do every October,
Mhm.
every one a day for 31 days is how we do it, and it's a different student and a different employer for 31 days.
Um, just to give everybody kind of a sense of like what Jason brings. We were at the ACTE conference in San Antonio, and it was and you opened up the session. It was a Friday session at
Yes,
4
four.
p.m. If you can imagine that, Allie, like, and it
For the
was
whole week.
packed and no one was leaving. Like, so, I know you're humble, but I just want to let you know, man, the fire you brought
Well, thank you.
for that was really, and that was on something else I wanted to kind of talk about was
Sure.
the reverse career fair and the
Yes,
way
sir.
that you do things so like differently. It's almost at this point, like as I'm kind of unpacking the knowledge and writing it down, I'm like, why didn't I think of that, right? I mean, you have this real good sense
Well,
of
thank you.
understanding a different angle to come in on something
Yes.
that, for some reason, a lot of us have blinders on, and there could be millions of other reasons for that. Yeah, talk about
Sure.
that reverse career fair that you have and the things that you teach students to do. And you're gonna listen to this, Allie, and you're gonna wish you were at the school even more.
I
So
know even more.
Well, The good news is I designed this to be uh, plug and play. So any school system can take this.
Hmm.
And all the resources are on my website. That the slide deck is on LinkedIn. It's on a little podcast that a buddy of mine and I do. The audio from the presentation, so you can literally listen to it and watch it. But a summary of this event is, if you've ever been to a career fair, it's really kind of awkward. It's really awkward because you have employers come in and they line the room. They bring in their tables and their banners and their swag and their sparkles and their lights, and they're trying to do all these things to catch these students' attention. And then you release the students into the room, and the students have never been taught how to engage adults. All right, never. And so even think, I even mentioned this kind of in that presentation. Like, I mean, I'm 43, I think, 42, 43, somewhere around there. We quit counting at some point, right? I'm 40, I think I'm 43, almost. Yeah, 43.
That's when I
Um,
quit.
yeah. So, but like when I was little, if I wanted to play with my friend, like we couldn't text, right? Texting didn't exist.
Mhm.
And little kids weren't allowed to use the phone. So I had to run to their house and knock on their door. And little kids, when I was little, weren't even allowed to answer the door. So mom or dad would answer the door, and I'd say, "Hey, is Mikey here? Is Johnny here? Can they come out and play?" Like there was a gatekeeper. I had to learn. My whole life was learning how to talk to adults, right? And there's a lot of benefit that our students get by working in this social and digital realm. But one of the downsides is they don't know how to engage people face to face.
Mhm.
And when you look your students in the eye, it is a palpable discomfort. You can see they do not feel comfortable with that. And so when you release students into a traditional career fair, they typically congregate in the middle, and you have those one or two exceptional students who are just going to go around and pick up all the line, and that's how it works, right? And so a friend of mine and I were talking through the process and saying, how can we, or what can we do to force engagement, right? I want the students to fail in a safe environment, but not attempting is not failing. I don't want that. I don't want you to abstain. I want you to push into and find out where your failing point is, and that's where you know you got to start growing. So we came up with the idea to flip the roles, Allie. So now my students spend the semester building a booth, building this presentation of their skills, not necessarily what they're doing for their job and work-based learning, because sometimes what they're doing in work-based learning isn't what they want to do for a career. Maybe I have a student who wants to be a physical therapist, right? Well, it's really hard to get a student a job in physical therapy because of HIPAA on their end and FERPA on my end. Um, and so some of these jobs, it's not about like if you work at Chick-fil-A, but you want to be a surgeon. I can't get a student an apprenticeship. And so I mean they can shadow for a couple of weeks, but I can't get them an actual hands-on apprenticeship, as a surgeon. So there are students who work in environments that aren't their work-based learning placement. So they're learning how to sell the skills, not of where they work, but of what they want to be, right? And then we do activities where I make them, engage with me in a conversation, do some research on me behind the scenes, non-school related research. They have to ask me questions and sustain a conversation with me. We do an activity on professional dress and differentiating the different types of professional dress, so I can tell, I've had employers tell me, hey, if you can just get your kids to show up for an interview, not in sweatpants and slides, like that'd be great, right? And it's like, yeah, yeah. I mean, so it sounds simple, but it's really not something that they're used to, because you can be impressive from here up on Instagram or Facebook and be wearing sweatpants or slides or whatever, and the kids don't know how to switch, or they don't know how to code switch between digital and in person. So what we do is they spend a semester building their booth. I teach them all these networking skills, how to engage, how to research people, right? So you invited me on your podcast, and you mentioned already you went and did a little bit of research, a little recon on my LinkedIn. That's what adults do. That's what
Yep.
we do, right? And so I teach the kids that skill. So I give them a list of the alphas who RSVP to the event, and then they have to go research those people. And then as the people either confirm or regret, then I'll say, hey, look, so and so is not coming. You can cross them off your research list. And at the end, right before the event, they have to give me their research list so I can check to see that they've been doing the research. And so then there's two parts to the event. One part is the open networking part where they have their booth, and then we release the employers into the room. So that's how you force engagement, right? Because the employers, why do they go to the career fair? They want to talk to kids. They want to see the new talent. This is not designed to be a hiring event, but it has turned into that. Um, the students are around the room with their booth, with their presentations, trying to draw people. You've been to conferences where you go to the vendor hall and everyone's fighting for your attention, right?
Mhm.
This is the same environment. Like the kids are fighting
Mhm.
for attention. They're trying to get people to come over. They're selling their skills in a formal environment. Then we stop and pause. Or at the end of that, we go into an informal environment where they're eating a catered meal. So they're learning how to sell their skills in a casual environment. And the whole time they're playing this game called Alpha Bingo, where I give them all a bingo card. Each one of the alphas' names are on it. And so when the alphas go through the room, it doesn't say Jason Van Nuss on their name tag. It says judge number one, judge number two, judge number three. And so the kids, if they've done their homework, they say, "Oh,
Wow.
you're Miss Allie Dahl." Yes, I am. Then you sign your name on their bingo card. But if they say, "Oh, you're Susie Smith," and you're like, "Oh no, that's not right," then you don't cross out your name because then you've told them who you are. You cross out Susie Smith's name, and now their bingo pattern is messed up. They got to go. So I'm teaching them how to network and engage, but they're playing a game. And I have one of my sponsors gives $100 bill to the first one to get bingo, and $100 bill to the one who either gets all of them right, which never happened, or the one to get the most right at the end of the day. So it's a 3 to 4 hour event. It's their final. We just did it last couple of days ago, December 11th, and the students do not look forward to it at all. But afterwards, they love it, and I have the data to prove it.
I
And so
bet.
that, and so I give them an exit survey, so here's my point in that: if the students don't look forward to it, but they are glad and they enjoyed it afterwards, what does that tell you that no one's doing in their school in their classes? They're not pushing them to the point of failure.
Yeah.
They're not pushing them to be uncomfortable. They're not making that. I like creating instances where it's like I call it scratchy. If you've ever been there, like it's just kind of like, oh, this is not comfortable, right? Like I want the kids to feel that because then they can push past it. And
Mhm.
so if they didn't enjoy preparing for it, but they enjoyed it and feel better prepared afterwards, that's a win for
Win.
me
Yeah.
because now I put them in a position to succeed and to learn these lessons. Also, when the alphas leave their booth, they have a little QR code for each student. The alphas scan the QR code and leave them anonymous feedback.
Yeah.
Hey, you didn't really make good eye contact. You had a great pitch, but you didn't look me in the eye. I had one student tell me, "Did you see my results?" Well, one lady told me that she didn't like my jeans. And I said, "Let's go look at that comment." And I said, "She didn't say she didn't like your jeans. She said, if I were hiring, I would have not prioritized you as serious because your jeans had frayed on the bottom." That's a good, and
Yeah.
it's anonymous because that was an
Yeah.
elected official who told her that. And so the reason it's anonymous is because I don't want any of my elected officials losing votes because someone's like, "Oh, they mean to my baby." I mean, so I don't want them doing that. But
Yeah.
it's important to get that feedback. And I'm like, "Look, this is not your teacher saying this. This is someone who hires people who's saying this."
Yeah.
And it's a way of kind of snapping them out of this myopic focus on immediate skill set and looking to the broader and saying, what am I really missing in terms of my ability to be career ready? And I love that term career ready. I hate the term college and career ready
Mhm.
because
Ooh.
no one retires from college. No one retires from college. Even if you go to college, it's for a career. So you're setting up a false dichotomy there. Let's
Yeah.
stop with the dichotomy. Let's
Mhm.
stop prioritizing and deprioritizing, competing. It's career ready. Whether you go to
Mm.
college to be a doctor or you go to trade school to be a welder, college is
Career.
is is not the important variable. It's the career is the important variable. So
Yeah.
Okay, Peter, before you jump in, I have I've never done this. We did not prepare for this. This conversation is unlike any we've had. I don't want to stop it. And I want to propose live that we just go into part two right now. You can
Right.
cut this how you want.
Yeah.
And we can do a little wrap up. We can
100%.
disrupt our own podcast here because I'm just gonna say, Jason, like you said you had nowhere to be.
I don't.
And
I'm good to go.
I
Yeah.
don't even want to recap this. We got
100%.
so many more questions for you,
Just take them.
and
Let me just do this real quick. Hey guys, part two is coming up next week. So stay tuned because there's way too much to do in one. And
this
guess
is
what? We're probably going to unravel some interesting workings that Jason and his podcast and our podcast. There's going to be some crazy stuff.
Absolutely. We're excited.
For Allie Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrasser. We're going to be continuing our conversation with Jason next week. on the Disrupt Education Podcast. We'll see you. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Ali Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.